I'd like to call this meeting of the Ellsworth Planning Board to order, July 10th, 2019. May we introduce ourselves, please?
David Burks.
Nelson Gill.
John DeLeo.
John Fink.
Rick Lyles.
Roger Sard.
The first order of business is the adoption of the minutes from the June 5th meeting. Has anyone a motion regarding those minutes?
Motion they be approved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please? Thank you. Next item of business is the final plan review for a minor subdivision titled Megan C. Fellis subdivision for Megan Fellis. The proposal is to divide a 13.3 acre parcel, tax map 117, lot 20 on the Mariahville Road, into 4 parcels, ranging in size from 2.4 to 4.2 acres. The subject property contains land in both the rural and limited residential zones. Someone representing the applicant, please.
Andrew McCullough representing the applicant.
Go ahead, please.
The plan, the final plan is as presented for preliminary purposes. We did make some minor adjustments to text on the plan in as far as the wording for the fire protection to be in conformance with the letter that Mike had prepared. We have set pins on the corners, and one of the, or a kind of the only outstanding item when we presented the preliminary plan was receipt of the driveway entrance permits. And when we submitted for the final, we did include the permits from the DEP for all 4 of those driveways. And
Must
So-
be DOT.
Main DOT.
All right.
Yeah.
Said DEP.
Oh, I'm sorry. I bounced between them
Those Ds get very confusing.
constantly.
The D and the T.
Yeah.
Well, as an action, no. No, I'm wrong. Go ahead.
No state, excuse me, no state permits are required for the subdivision. There's no wetland impacts. And I really can't think of more to summarize for you, honestly.
And this has already been found to be a complete plan.
Yes,
And the preliminary is sort of now the final.
yes.
Do we want to go through the submission requirements to make sure those are all met? Are we satisfied that they are?
I'm good to go.
I'm good.
I'm good.
I do have a question now.
You do?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, just,
No, no,
everyone seems so calm.
Yeah, well, you know, we can liven it up here, not to
Okay,
worry.
good.
So, where the driveways go in, I mean, you mark those on the
Yes.
drawing and so forth. And my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that there needs to be a 20-foot level thing at the, kind of at the end of the drive, it comes up and it levels off before it goes onto the street, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so those aren't there now, right? I mean, that's something that happens in final grading whenever these
Yeah.
properties are built?
Yeah.
Okay, so my question is, and it's as much to the people who are on this side of the room as it is to you, but who checks to make sure that that kind of stuff actually happens when the construction takes place? Okay, and he's looking at that
afraid
side of the
I'm
room.
Well, I guess I am gonna kind of look that way. I'm typically not involved when it's a residential situation like this.
Right, no, I get that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's not a criticism, it's just a
Right,
question, right?
Right. I
I
don't.
presume it'd be the CEO.
Pardon me?
I presume it'd be Dwight or Laurie.
Yeah, I know Dwight has, in the past, reviewed and looked at some of that stuff to make sure it meets plan as well as the minimum requirements.
So when the plans for a structure and whatever actually come in, that
Yep.
triggers him to look at it,
Yep.
and he's the guy.
Correct.
And just for the record, Dwight's on vacation tonight. He's not skipping the meeting. He's,
Where's Laura?
Well, if he's,
He's panning for gold.
if he's not here, he's not here.
Well, hold it, where's Laura?
Lori had a very full day. She worked until 6 o'clock. So
So, she could have stayed.
we
a little
decided to
later.
give her a break.
I know she's highly allergic to coming here.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, can I just, I've got a
Oh.
document here to share with the board, maybe just as you begin your.
This is a good time.
Okay.
Well, actually, let me just do one thing.
Yes.
This is a public hearing. Does anyone wish to comment upon this matter? Hearing none, I close the public hearing. Thank you. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. And I'll hand this out and just give a brief explanation once I've done that.
Sorry. Just give me all of them.
And this is, Doug, this is kind of prompted by your question last month, John,
Yes.
Leah, about just going over compliance with the ordinance. So this is a draft document that we've prepared as staff, but it's certainly open to modification, change, correction, anything that you find, but just, thought that it would be helpful as you prepare to make a vote, just to kind of run through the different articles within Chapter 56. That starts on the front side, and then on the back side, there are a couple other ordinances that are referred to. Chapter 28, the subdivision ordinance, and then also Chapter 4, Mike's ordinance, since that was one of the pieces involved here. So, again, you can look through that, and we may tweak the format of this going forward and also the delivery of it, but we just wanted to make a, first attempt at it tonight. And again, but it's certainly open to change or adjustment by the board as you discuss and go through this.
And when would we see this? I mean, I get that this is a test run, but do we see this during the preliminary or in between times, or?
No, I think it would be for the final once, because we want to make sure that we.
But in advance of this meeting? No, at the meeting.
I can cover
Yeah.
it. So other municipalities that I've worked for do this, and it's just a proposed finding of fact for the board to go through at a final decision. So really, usually, typically what would happen is that the chair reads out that section, and the board can deliberate on whether or not they believe it actually meets that section, it doesn't meet that section, or it's not applicable. So John could read like Article 2, does it meet that standard? He has a brief summary there, and so it's part of the deliberation and the finding of fact, and it's, typically the deliberation and the finding of fact is a little looser during these meetings, so we wanted to, since we have so many new members, do it in a way that's a little bit more formalized. It allows you to learn the ordinance a little easier, is our thought process. And then when it comes to crafting the action letter, we already have the findings, and therefore the board is already sort of going through the findings before the action letter is actually created.
Now, when we see this, would the check marks all be in place? or-
No, so that was something
No.
that we just talked about
Yeah.
before, that the check marks typically from now on won't be there,
Part
so
of the
that
tweaking process.
the
Yeah.
board would actually create the
And-
check marks as
and
you
each
go
of us
through
can-
them.
I would expect each of us would do that as we review it before the meeting.
No, so
No?
the idea is that we wouldn't give this to you until you're ready to deliberate, and so you would go through it and actually deliberate using this as your deliberation tool, if you will. So you'd say, it meets Article 2, maybe half of you agree, and the other half say, actually, I don't think it does because, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a test run, but what we want to do is provide you with a tool to create a finding of fact, but not feed you a finding of fact, if you will.
Now, may I suggest yet another form?
Yes.
Yes, we're open to
And that
feedback.
is a essentially a checklist of the submission requirements for major and minor subdivisions. So that we can use as we're reviewing the materials to say, yes, I found this, I found this.
So would that be for the preliminary plan?
For both,
For
actually.
both?
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah.
sure, yeah, we can work on that. I think there probably is a template, something like that that's been used in the past,
Yes.
and we can,
Yeah.
you know, and if not, we can make one based on the ordinance, absolutely, yeah.
Well, it's better than using, say, Orno's ordinance.
And we will, as you noted, John, leave that blank so that you can, it's more of a
Yeah.
worksheet, it would be more of a worksheet, I think, style.
Sounds good.
Is the list that's here on the form, is that a uniform list then for, so it's gonna vary by
It's going to be tailored to the
subdivision or whatever?
project.
Correct.
Okay.
Tailored, yeah.
Well, I think it's a good idea, don't get me wrong, but I think if it's uniform, it's for each one, which it's not, and I get that. That would be fine, if it was uniform, it would be fine not to get it beforehand, okay?
Right,
But
right.
I would think that we would really like to have this filled out or not beforehand.
I would agree with that too, because I think to get this the night of the final, and like I say, it changes from project to project, then to sit here, to have 5, 6, 7 people going through, okay, breaking out the book, okay, does it meet section 207? We're all sitting here thumbing through the ordinance book. and then-
Well, excuse me if I could interrupt. I think the idea was that the chair would go through the sections of the ordinance and say, and just give a little quick summary of each section, and we can check them off as we go.
And maybe we can make a worksheet,
Yeah.
I'm just kind of thinking out loud, make a worksheet for both the submission requirements and for this, give one that is is more generic and that you can fill out the ones that you think
Yeah.
are applicable. And then there can also be,
Yeah.
you know, we could work on that as well. I mean, I hear what the board is saying.
You need to publish an app.
Okay.
Well, again, I have no problem with, the two versions or whatever, but whatever versions we're gonna be using, I'd still like to get them up front, because
Yeah.
notwithstanding that you're gonna read, a couple sentences or thoughts or whatever moves your soul, we're still gonna be thrashing around. And I don't think we wanna be thrashing around here. We do enough thrashing as it is. Just be my view. But I think it's a great idea, though, let me just say.
No, well, we appreciate the feedback, so.
I just want to thank Andrew for letting us use this project for,
As a guinea pig, you know what I mean?
So that we can identify you on the recording computer, state your
oh, sorry,
name.
Jana Richards, Director of Development Services.
Whoa,
That's
the
new to me.
the new Jana Richards,
Right.
as opposed to the old one, right?
Thank you.
Anyways, cool.
So what would the board like to do?
I have one more question about that. Would we get it for preliminary? No, just for final?
Oh, good question.
And again, we could make it more of a worksheet that is less.
Yeah, if we had
tailored.
it for a worksheet for
We could
preliminary.
make a generic worksheet that would be just, could be used for any project. Make maybe two, one for submission requirements, one for the different articles, and that way you could fill it
We
out.
could do it before we go to
Yeah.
final.
And then there could be one that's more tailored to this, that's presented as this one is being presented now. So again, it's a work in progress. We appreciate your patience as we do this work in progress. But yes, I think there could be something that could be done that was more of a worksheet, generalized, that you could fill out as board members
For the preliminary.
for the
Yeah,
preliminary.
and then we'd have a month to
more
look at
focused
it, right.
worksheet for the,
Correct.
Right.
You know, that could be part of your packet, when you get your packet.
even better.
And this is one, a project where we've had it for a little while, and so it's a little different, but typically, yes, I think you could get a worksheet, with your packet, once we get a general template done up.
And as a new member, I think that the checklist or worksheet, whatever it is, speaking for myself, would be
Yeah.
very handy
Okay.
to prepare.
Yeah.
But seeing this first time at the planning board meeting, I'd be a little concerned about timing. That it would take quite a bit of
Sure,
time to go
thrashing
through
around,
this
yeah.
line by line.
Mhm.
Especially in several cases.
Right.
Well, don't worry, Steve, I will call you every day to check on your progress.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, I would just, one more comment.
That's why we're
Okay,
here.
and that is, I mean, I like the whole thing, I like the preliminary versus the whatever, but getting these things in advance is all the more important. I mean, if there's just one project here, that's
Correct.
one thing, but if there are 4 or 5, like there were at the
Last
last
month,
meeting,
yes.
it just becomes
Yep.
that much
Cumbersome.
crazier,
Yep.
yeah. So,
Yep.
food for thought.
Duly noted.
So Jana and Steve, just relax, we only expect perfection.
You can put that in the minutes.
Okay, yeah,
You seem to get everything else.
right, I'll make sure to include that.
So Andrew, why are you here?
Yeah. What is your problem?
I don't know.
Did you fill out
It's
your
the guinea
worksheet?
pig.
Did you fill out your worksheet?
Yeah, but,
I would have if I would have.
yeah, but then, what you know, the burden of proof is on the applicant, and what he might have to go through in addition, because of filling out that sheet.
Well,
because
I mean-
yeah.
And only these guys are perfect because that's what you expect of them. But, I kind of have to try to go through and make sure that it has everything in it before I submit it.
Well,
It's a
and,
good idea, and the tradition used to be, who cared? And then we would be on one project for months.
Right.
Do you
and,
remember those
that's-
days? Was that before your time?
No, I've seen that happen, but that's no fun for me or you, so.
so here's the deal, if the person who's, Andrew,
Yeah.
in this particular case, is in that loop of getting this sort of worksheet and so forth, that seems like it would be a good idea too. Because like you say, you do go through that, and, I mean, if not on a worksheet, at least you go through all these things, say, oh yeah, we got, you're checking your boxes, right?
And that happens in
yeah.
a way with the TRT process.
I'm sorry?
That happens in a way with the TRT.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But
This just formalizes
No,
it.
that point is well
Yeah.
taken, yes, yep.
Because what you don't want to have happen is, I say, well, did you think about that? And he's sitting there saying, well, actually, I didn't. But if he
Right.
has the worksheet, then presumably we at least start out on the same page.
Yeah.
And Steve, just think, if you guys really hate the project, give the applicant the wrong worksheet.
There you go.
We keep track of things pretty closely, we would not do that.
Speaking of TRT, did we have any report for TRT this time?
We did not, no,
Okay.
there was not, and I think maybe there was something last month to indicate that, but then again, it was tabled last month, so it's, again, it's a
Right.
little, the timing's a bit different on this one, but no, there was no TRT report, because there were no concerns or questions from the TRT.
So is someone prepared to say something?
Yeah, I make a motion and proposal that we pass for final review. Subdivision titled Megan C. Phillips?
Fellas.
Phelps. Subdivision for Megan Phelps. The proposal is to divide a 13.3 acre parcel. Tax map 117 lot 20 on the Mariahville Road into 4 parcels, ranging in size from 2.4 to 4.2. And subject property contains land in both rural and limited residential zones.
Second.
Well, may I make a suggestion that
Sure.
in this motion that we fold in this draft findings of fact as the board's findings of fact? And that will detail that.
Okay.
Is that
And-
necessary?
Yes, I think because we would otherwise have to state our findings of fact for the record.
Okay,
This makes it much easier because we would just,
okay.
it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Andrew, we'll sing happy birthday.
No.
It's your birthday present, Andrew.
Yeah, not singing is his birthday.
No, accepting this.
Yeah, this was, you can go home now.
I know.
Is anyone expecting you at this time?
We can use this for the TRT.
I don't know. I told them it wouldn't be real long. I didn't think.
Hold it, we need to keep you.
Well, before we
there-
adjourn, I'd like to ask Mr. Hangy a question. I'm just wondering an update on the Black House, on the water issue.
So on July 7th, we had the fire sprinkler company that did the initial flow test back in 2017 come and do the test after the new water line and hydrant were put in. That test failed to meet 120 or 813 gallons a minute at 20 psi. We got, I think it was 400, it was pretty close to what we had before, with basically the same type of residual pressure. So on the 18th, excuse me, June, it was June, not July. On the 18th of June, we went out, as far as the fire department, myself, the chief, deputy chief, and did a second test to verify what the sprinkler company did using a little bit different method by checking the gauges on the sprinkler system that's in the Black House right now for residual and static pressure. We came up with the same pretty much flow, static pressure, and et cetera. So the new line that went in has not increased the flow to the point of where they have been able to, or where they meet the minimum requirements of the plan that the planning board approved. They have not come back yet with any sort of plan as to what they're going to do. I know they have been looking at different options. And one of those options basically is putting an underground tank in up there, which can be very expensive. I know that the two 10,000 gallon tanks that went in two other subdivisions, to the tune probably of about $50,000 by the time it was all said and done, groundwork, tank, setting, things like that. And those were 10,000 gallon tanks. I believe they're looking at much larger tank than just 10,000 gallons. The sprinkler company has said that they're looking at what they need for water flow to protect the new building. And they're not exactly sure what they're going to do yet until we get some sort of answer from the developer, their engineers, and what they're going to provide for water supply. Because when he does his hydraulic calculations for that building, he has to have the water there to do it. And right now, he does not have that water.
Now, if I understand that, what you're saying, it would seem that if it goes the route of the underground tanks, that would be something that they would have to come back to the planning board for, because that's not meeting the magic number.
That's correct. That's what the understanding that we had at the time, is that they would have to come back to discuss what they were going to do. Because that may change the positioning of the building, it may change, we don't know. Like it says, they're looking at a tank, they could be looking at a 100,000 gallon tank, which is a very, very large tank. And it may not be that big, but they need to discuss this with the sprinkler company as to what's going on. I know that the sprinkler company's been looking at the hydraulic calculations, and I have not heard back from them as to what the needed flow is, but the minimum is going to be at least a 15,000 gallon tank, so to provide what they need for fire protection for the building. That still does not get us to the point of where that hydrant for fire protection water supply for us is required. Because as soon as we hook onto that fire hydrant and start pulling water from that, we start pulling water away from the sprinkler system if that's what was to happen, so. So the tank is something that they're looking at, and we're not sure what's gonna happen there yet. So it's still up in the air, but we do know that that water test did fail as far as the minimum requirements.
Thank you.
Are there MyLars to sign?
There are, yes.
And let me make a motion that the planning board will adjourn as soon as the MyLars are signed. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please? Thank you.